Hello again, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. I am Sam Z,
And I'm Sarah G.
and we are your Circle community managers. Circle Live, thank you very much. That one woo. Circle Live is our monthly internet community talk show just for Circle members where we get authentic and personal with our Circle community. And today, for the very first time, we have a very, very special episode of Circle Live.
Without further ado, we are excited to welcome up Squarespace CEO and founder, Anthony Casalena.
Of course.
Yeah.
Anthony, welcome to Circle Day and welcome to Circle Live. So great to have you.
Great to be here. This is the most comfortable on stage setup I think I've ever had here at Squarespace. First off, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be able to talk to you all today. And I met with a couple of people yesterday, and it's just, it remains incredibly humbling to see all of you and all the businesses that are built around Squarespace and the Squarespace ecosystem. So I guess I'd just like to start off the chat with a thank you to you all for coming and for being such wonderful members of our community. So.
And we get to interact with this community every day. It's so wonderful. Anthony, to start off, I want to talk a little bit about design. It is a beautiful office. People who are seeing it for the first time, walking around seeing just the way that it's designed, seeing all the art on the walls, and obviously the product that you've worked on for the last 20 years is very design focused. I'm curious, where does that come from, that design focus? Were you ever wanting to be a designer, an artist?
So it's funny, I grew up, I moved to New York in 2006. I grew up in northern Maryland, actually, northern Baltimore County. And one of the, all right. And one of the funny things about where I grew up, and I'm gonna say I got it from my mother, if you looked at 100 houses in the neighborhood where I grew up and you looked at the interiors and you're like, which one do you think Anthony grew up in? You would get it right. My mom was really into design. She's a bit of an artist herself, but really into interior design, that sort of thing. And so I think I genetically get it from her. But it's something I've always been fascinated in. I started programming when I was 12 or 13. And when I started programming, one of the first things that interested me was user interfaces, and it was Windows at the time. So it was like, hey, how does a text box work? Can I draw a text box? How do the characters work? Can I draw them? Can I draw a cursor? Like just kind of experimenting with the visuals on the computer. And programming was amazing because it gave anyone really, almost aside from the cost of the computer, the opportunity to express yourself and to create visual things. And so my artistry, if you even want to call it that, I don't really refer to myself as an artist, was really centered in user interfaces and programming. So, yeah.
And I think at times in interviews, you've even referred to yourself, though, as a designer developer.
Well, I learned programming. One of the reasons I learned programming was to be able to design things and to design interfaces. And so, yeah, I think those two things are, my core skill set from, 30 years ago or whatnot. And now I joke that I'm a HR and comms person. So we can all learn new things.
That's great. Squarespace has a couple different values that kind of guide all the work that we do. And one of them is that design is not a luxury. Where did that value come from and why?
Yeah, so a couple years into Squarespace, we sat down as a group and we started to think through, and these are the values that you read on the About page of the website. There's 6 of them. What are the things that make this place special, right? Like, what are the things that we can put up on that values page? They're not the same as other companies. And there's other values that we find very important too. Humility and respect and honesty and all those things. But a lot of companies are going to claim those things. What are the things that Squarespace can say that are unique to this place? And so we came up with those 6 values on the front site. And one of them, I think it was actually David Lee, who you're going to hear from later today in Dialogue. I think he actually coined that phrase, design is not a luxury. And part of the idea behind that is to say, look, design can be very expensive. Creative direction can be expensive. But what Squarespace seeks to do is take, we spend a lot on design, but to take that and package it in a way and give it to everybody, right? So a Squarespace website, 15 years ago, for the cost of $20 a month, $15 a month, or whatever it was back then, that site would have cost you so much to get developed before, and you probably wouldn't have even done it with the creative level that we aspire to. So it's just been a real pleasure to spread that value of design to the world and do it in a way that's at an accessible price point and get millions of people access to that. And that really is embodied in everything we do, right? I mean, this whole office is an embodiment of that idea, right? This is where we come to work every day, and I come to work. And I wanted to reflect those values. Different companies have different values. The Facebook office and the Google office look very different than this. So that's just an important part of everything we do, and I'm happy to be doing it. A long time ago with Squarespace, probably like 10, 15 years ago, the criticism was always, oh, look at this like slick New York-looking company. Like this, no one cares about design. No one cares about this stuff. And I'm like, I don't really know if that's true. I don't think they would say they do, and they might not lead with it, but there's a power to it that can really elevate ideas. And so I think once they experience that, that'll be something really positive for people. And lo and behold, that was mostly true.
It's absolutely true. I think everyone in this room is grateful for how much you care about design. I would like to turn back to your comment before about being an HR professional. The question I'm going to ask here about just sort of leadership, and I'm not going to ask you about HR, don't worry.
Sorry.
But so to set this up, Picasso has a quote: when art critics get together, they talk about form and function and color and meaning, but when artists get together, they talk about where to find cheap turpentine. What do CEOs talk about when they get together?
We mostly complain. No, it depends on the CEO. I mean, there's so many different kinds of leaders. There's so many different kinds of CEOs. I'm a strange one, that I'm also the founder of the company, right? And usually the founders of the company don't like to do the job all the way through to kind of where I am right now, 20 years later. But it's actually what keeps me going. I think that if it was too much of the same for too long, I don't know if I could be doing this. So, I make the HR joke, but that growth is actually really important to me. And actually, the team here and the team we have and everyone I work with is the other thing that keeps me going. Because without that, I couldn't do it, and we couldn't make the product that we've made. So I grow a lot from my team members. When a lot of them joined, they were just so much better than me at what their respective things were, from John a long time ago in engineering and management, to David in agency like creative and design and thought direction there. But to your original question, what does CES talk about? It frankly is different at all levels. I think, if you're a CEO of a 5-person or 10-person company, it is extremely different than being the CEO of now we've been a public company for a little over 2 years. And so, yeah, it's just complaining about all the problems at any of those stages.
It's interesting hearing about what you discuss, and I know you also mentioned learning a lot from the team here at Squarespace. And I know being someone who's on the team here, we've seen how you kind of can flex your communication style, whether you're talking to CEOs, you're leading in all hands, or you're talking to our customers. What advice do you have for Circle members who maybe are bouncing between different clients, speaking to their peers? What guidance do you have on flexing your communication style?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. Guidance on flexing your communication style. I feel that for whatever reason, I maybe it's just living in New York for so long and having such a diverse group of friends and communities who do just very, very different things from different backgrounds and different places, that I feel like I actually really enjoy talking to people. And so I kind of transport that to situations like this and situations like an all hands or talking to an analyst or whatever. Now, I mean, all those conversations are different. If I'm talking to an analyst, I'll still make jokes and stuff, but maybe less. But, or the all hands, try and keep things jovial, but still have a pointed message in everything we say. I'm not sure. I've just tried to lean into that level of authenticity and not be scripted in anything. And it's funny because on some levels, like we did I did a podcast called How I Built This a while ago, and it's a good one, by the way, not because of me, but because of how he conducts that interview. There's actually like a 30-minute pre-call where he's like, anything off limits, and he kind of gives you a warning, and he's like, if this sounds like a bunch of PR stuff that your PR people said, we're not going to air it. And I'm like, don't worry, I don't have any of that stuff in my head anyway. But that's a good podcast, and it's just, I guess I'm just talking about how I don't fall back on scripted stuff, really. I might go into a conversation and be like, here are 3 bullets I need to hit, 3 words, get those out. And if I did that, success. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
We know that back in the early days of Squarespace, you were actually the main person communicating with all Squarespace customers through chat support. If you didn't know, it was Anthony.
Email support, actually.
Do you have any specific memories of your interactions with customer support back in the early days?
It was so much fun. So it's interesting because I essentially, for the most part, ran Squarespace myself for about 3 years. And so I would time block a certain point of time in the day, because otherwise I can't answer emails all day long. It was like after some class or something in college. And I remember the emails would pile up. There'd be like 100, 150, 200. And I would go through and just in a block, just knock them out as fast as possible. And I think our customer support team still uses Typinator or whatnot to do the macros. That was me. I was the original user of Typinator. And yeah, I sent back, John Colton ran the query for us once. I probably responded 70 or 80,000 times, which is a lot. But if you think about it, it's 200 a day for like years, right? And so, all right, that's cool. Let's see. I think my 2 main takeaways were, so it's always really funny when they're like, get your manager. And I'm like, present. And then, at times people are just exceptionally rude to you. And I think that my main takeaway from that was to just be calm. Ultimately, we're talking about a website. I don't think someone's dying because of the website. Just be calm, nice, sorry to hear that. But then just give a really useful answer. And 9 times out of 10, somebody who is exploding feels ridiculous when you give them that response. Like, oh God, I was going so crazy. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no problem. It's okay. You don't know who you're talking to. You're typing in the box on a screen. It dehumanizes people. But I just to be able to remain calm and to realize you can probably change someone else's emotional state 9 out of 10 times and make it better and be useful. It was really interesting. I mean, that feedback loop, though, with customers, I don't know if a big company ever fully gets back to that loop, but we've always invested an immense amount in customer support. We have an incredible customer support team, most of which, we hired as either part-time or full-time employees who work, here. They have a little bit of stuff that's outsourced now for certain things, but it was always a big investment for us. And that's just because, I did it for so long. And I was like, look, no matter how good I make this software, there are going to be problems. There are going to be questions. You need this. It's part of one of the main values that we provide. And so it's a pleasure for me to invest in our customer support team, and they win many, many awards. But that feedback loop, though, when you're doing it all, is super interesting. I know a lot of you are probably in this position because, those of us who've had a solo operation, it's like, you see the problem, you fix the problem, you go, you get another message, you see the problem, you fix the problem. That loop gets diluted in larger companies. And so we really try hard to make sure those lanes of communication are open so that we, are reacting to, problems, and the people here feel the problems and all that. It's why I actually have been genuinely quite encouraged by the level of engagement that our teams and our PMs are having with the Circle community throughout new releases. I know we don't always get this perfectly, but I think it's getting a little bit better over the years. But I'm like, this community is an amazing group of advocates. They use this product every day. Half the people in this room probably are better at using Squarespace than half the people in this building. So, insofar as people want to deploy this for their clients and they want to use these tools, rely on them, talk to them, and engage with them, and get their feedback. It's usually fantastic. So, I love that engagement. So I love when our PMs and this community are in dialogue.
It is really great customer support. My dad made a point to email me that when I started working here. and he needs a lot of support. But it's so interesting having you as the leader of the same company for 20 years, with the experience in these stories and the customer support. Another thing that makes people nervous, I think, when leading a company or a new product that brought into the world is the elevator pitch. So over the 20 years, I'm also curious, how has your elevator pitch for what you've built changed?
You're talking about the message of Squarespace and how it's evolved over the past 2 decades. What's interesting is on the timeline site that we launched for the 20th anniversary, you can actually see really old versions of the Squarespace website, like back when we had colors and creepy things like that. And I think originally it was very functional. It was about web publishing. It was about beautiful web publishing. And at the end of the day, as the mission evolves and goes broader, you sort of realize, like, well, why do people make a website? Well, they make a website. They have a point to making a website. They either, most of the people in Squarespace want to facilitate some sort of action. They want you to contact them. They want to sell a physical product, book an appointment, sell a service, book a reservation, book a hotel room. And so it kind of very quickly gets you into the realm of entrepreneurship and enabling entrepreneurship. And a lot of what we've done in the past decade is in service of that. So yes, websites and domains and whatnot are going to be Squarespace's bread and butter. It's at the core of expressing yourself online. But a lot of what you see us do in some of our acquisitions are around enabling people to transact online. So book an appointment, sell a product. And so we're really into that era of commerce and the ability for people to run their businesses and do that off of Squarespace. A lot of you do because you're developers and you're working on top of the Squarespace platform. But for our end customers, and you're enabling them, they're running businesses themselves. So it's really amazing to be part of an ecosystem where we're responsible for millions of those people's businesses being online and billions of dollars transacted through that platform every year. So that's kind of how it's evolved.
The theme of Circle Day this year is Build Your Toolkit, which we've been talking about all day, going to sessions, adding new skills to our tool belt. What is one tool in your leadership toolbox that you use on a daily basis?
My leadership toolbox? I had a leadership toolbox. so if I'm having a bad day, as it imply I left my leadership toolbox at home. I'm like, I can't have this conversation. I need to get my toolbox.
It can be a Batman tool belt if you want, like
a utility belt,
yeah.
A fanny pack. No, look, I would say it's like, to make a joke, like therapy. I mean, people are having problems all the time, and I think usually what I'm here to do is talk them through it, remove roadblocks when I can, try and figure out how to make this place better for people, and make sure they get a good amount of the credit for their work. So that's something I'm always sort of thinking about.
Absolutely, and I feel that just through the chain of command. I feel like all of my managers really want to help me out, and I've experienced that. So yeah, I just can't get over the fact that it's a 20-year company, and you've been here the entire time, and I'm really curious.
Either, by the way.
Yeah,
it's some days.
It's quite an achievement, and when in 2003. Did you ever think you would be here in front of over 100 people, over 100 pro users, and a couple thousand people online talking about this thing that you made 20 years later?
No. No. I mean, I've always, been a programmer and been a bit of an entrepreneur and like making things. And, I'm sure some of you have heard the origin stories of Squarespace on podcasts and whatnot, so I won't go through it, but I was really making it for myself. And I really just realized from people around me when I was showing it to them that this was something they wanted to use too. And I care about usability, and I care about design. And, we take it for granted right now that everything on the web has, a bit of a design angle to it. But in 2003, I mean, if you go to the Wayback Machine or something, go pull up Squarespace's website from like 2006, and then go to like apple.com or go to microsoft.com or go to all these other sites. it is not everywhere. It's weird. And so it was great to be a part of that. But no, just growing up with it, yeah, I never knew what scale it could get to. I knew it was a big idea, right? There's a lot of websites, a lot of domains, a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a big market, right? It's not niche. But to have a DIY web tool and tool set for entrepreneurs exists for this long is kind of quite a thing. 20 years ago, 2004 is when we launched. That's like when Facebook launched. There's no YouTube, there's no iPhone for another, when iPhone, 2012 or something like that? For like another decade? It was just like wild how we've evolved. And I'm really proud of it, how we've evolved with those times. When you go to squarespace.com right now, when I look at that or we look over it, it looks modern, right? It does not look like a 20-year-old company. And it's because we're constantly investing in renewal and keeping it modern and improving things and everything we're doing here. So frankly, it's not only is it crazy that it's at the scale it's at, it's crazy that it existed for 20 years in technology. Look at how many things don't. So
I think we should. I want to leave enough time for the circle member questions. I know we have more questions for you from us, but I feel like this is a good time to talk about the circle member questions. Sarah, what do you think?
It is. We have one that I think would be a perfect transition.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so Squarespace has been around for 20 years. We've had some circle members in here who have reportedly been building websites for upwards of 12 years. But the circle program has only existed for 7 years. And I'm curious, what made you excited about launching a community for pros?
So there was a very big moment in Squarespace's history, and there's a release we called Squarespace 6. And so Squarespace 1.5, blogging platform, was the original code that I was making in my dorm room. And I remember I was looking at it with a design engineer here, and we looked at this. We had this thing where we could look at all the sites people paid for, right? And so if you paid for a site, we would wait like 30 days, and it would just be this big grid of sites, and we constantly look at it. Like, what are people doing? And we would use it to find weird visual bugs that people would never report or stuff. We would just look at it and fix things. And it was really important because it's like, okay, these are the people who are paying you, and this is what they're doing with it. And one day, I was sitting there with Josh Kill, and we were looking at it, and I was just like, wow, we are really screwed. These sites suck. We got to fix this. Like, this is just not going to, these aren't going to be modern in 5 years. And so we started making Squarespace 6. And Squarespace 6 was centered around the idea. This was back when the old dev platform was still there, before 7.1, that you should be able to make any kind of site on Squarespace. And so we did. And a lot of the early sites we made on Squarespace 6, this launched in 2012, July, were portfolios. And a lot of those portfolios we were making for a number of reasons. One was these were the most visually sophisticated sites, right? So we got an excuse to use like crazy JavaScript and big full screen images and stuff like that when that stuff was not popular, mostly because of browser technologies and other things. And we thought, okay, if we can make these sites, then we can make any site, which is maybe a naive way of putting that, but like it was at least a stab at the hardest to make sites. And so those sites got translated into small business websites, because what's the difference between certain kinds of portfolio websites and a bakery that's showing a slider of images? Actually, not that much. And then it also put us in touch with a lot of the agency, photography, creative community, which we were ourselves, and we were building the sites for ourselves and for them. And so a lot of those people are web developers, visual designers, and so we had a really big presence in portfolios. And so we were always sort of like developer adjacent, if you will. My background's being a developer. I'd want to push the platform. I was with other people who wanted to push the platform. And so it was always kind of in the DNA of the platform to have this like tweaker developer sort of mentality. And I can talk about how that's evolved over time from the 6 system to the 7 system, the 7.1 system. But yeah, so we were always very adjacent to it. So honestly, creating something like Circle was just a very natural extension of what was already happening, right? We didn't sit out there and go, oh, what would be a great idea is if we courted all the development. That was already happening. And so we just wanted to get it together, provide more resources for the community, engage with the community. And so, yeah, it was just very, very natural evolution of something that was, bound to exist considering that context.
That's awesome. And I think that the community has certainly felt that evolution, even in the last 7 years, as we've grown and evolved and learned how to work even better together. Could you just elaborate on the unique, we're moving into our questions from the community. Could you just elaborate on the unique value and benefits that Squarespace's pro users bring to the platform and how their needs are being recognized and addressed?
Yeah, well, it's incredibly important to us from a number of angles. One is this community accounts for, depending on how you want to define it, almost 10% of our new subscribers. So there's tens of thousands of people who are developing on Squarespace. It's a single-digit percentage, almost double-digit percentage of our new subscribers. So that's 10% of our business. That's huge. There are plenty of people, no matter how easy we make this tool, that will never go and use it themselves. They just won't. And so they need help. And so it's always been a part of our DNA to focus on that and focus on people who want to help other people, and then make it so that you can hand that site over, God willing, to the client sometimes, and that they can make updates on it, maybe themselves. I don't know if that's a great idea all the time, but that's always been important to us. I mentioned earlier the team engagement. Making sure our team is engaged with the Circle community on betas, on upcoming launches, both for feedback and to ease the transition into those changes. Yeah, I mean, it's just embedded in everything we do.
We are releasing a lot of new stuff these days. Yeah. Yeah, we covered a bunch of them this morning: courses, our project management tooling, and as you all heard this morning, a 7-to-7-1 update tool, which I know a lot of people are really excited about.
Clap, yeah. I mean, I got a demo of that tool a couple weeks ago, and honestly, it was one of those meetings where I was like, yeah, right. Like, this is never gonna work. And lo and behold, it actually works pretty well. It's not perfect, but it's a path. And I think that's what a lot of people need there, and they're willing to put in, a little bit more work to get it right on the other side, so long as we're moving the right data over. I was really happy with what they did with the staging environment, how they leveraged the existing template switching functionality in a really smart way. So hats off to the team here who did that. It's really great to see. What was the question?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think given that context, given how much is coming out these days, how does Squarespace think about striking a balance between launching new products and maintaining and improving our existing suite of tools?
Yeah, so if you just look at the past decade as history, it's weirdly it's a pendulum sometimes, especially when the company was smaller. You can have Squarespace 6, 7 out and really be investing in it full time, and then there was a bit of a lull in there while we were trying to develop a next gen system that we actually never ended up launching, and ended up launching 7.1 instead, and rolled those features into that core system instead of trying to do this grand Squarespace 8 sort of thing, which never worked for a number of reasons. But so you see the pendulum swing. We had the platform in place, 100% of functionalities getting deployed into that platform. Sometimes it shifts to an internal next-gen thing, starves the existing platform. We realize that's wrong, move it back, do an incremental step, roll things into that, and move things forward. Another thing that is really, really important to us right now is that 7 to 7.1 transition. Because if you think about why things started to go slow for a little bit in the middle there, it's for this reason. So in 7, we can make whatever, in 6 and 7, whatever, same underlying template system, we can make whatever websites we wanted, and we did that with code. And so we made a couple core different, like root templates, if you will, and then staged them in different ways. And so if you remember, hopefully you don't remember because you blocked it out of your memory because it was a nightmare, the grid that was like templates, feature compatibility, what happens where, what's an index section, all this bullshit. So at some point, I was looking at that, and I'm like, I can't even keep this straight. I have no idea what's gonna happen when I change the template, and I made it. So like, this is really, really bad. So, and it also really impacted our ability to deploy new features. Because if you've got 10 different code bases, each of which take these underlying concepts and use them in different ways, God help us in trying to deploy something consistently across those code bases. So we needed a reset, and 7.1 was that reset to say, look, it's gonna be one unified actual design system, not separate code bases, so that the features are coherent and consistent when you use them, no matter what your starting point was. And so with that investment, we're able to deploy features at a much faster rate because we're not deploying them into 20 different code bases. We're deploying them in the one. And I'm really thrilled with where things like Fluid Engine have gotten to. Obviously, a very tough thing to release. A lot of built-in stuff around Layout Engine. Everyone knows that thing has been there for a while. But it was a flawed system. It wasn't actually ever going to be able to eliminate spacers and shit. So, and that's not what should have ever happened. So, love the investment in that system. But anyway, that's just a bit of history in terms of like why things move slow for a sec, the evolution of the next template system, and why things can move a bit faster right now. And we have Refresh coming up, which is the annual event, the product roundup. It is the best one we've ever had. I've never seen more things released in a year. It's fantastic. So I'm really pleased with our momentum. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that event in a couple of weeks, months, 2 months.
My dad is going to need some more customer support.
Well,
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
I think with the announcement of the 7.1 update tool, question that is probably on folks' minds is 7.0 still being supported by Squarespace? What's the forecast there?
It'll be supported forever. We have millions of Squarespace sites on. We support Squarespace 5. It's a decade old. Not everything can roll into the 7.1 experience for the reasons I just mentioned, that it's across all these different code bases, which is what was literally preventing us from releasing things. So I hope with the update tool, we provide a path forward. My main goal with the 7.0 sites is kind of the goal throughout Squarespace's history is that when we deploy something, in an ideal sense, it should never disrupt your site. That's the most annoying thing that there possibly is. I know that doesn't always hold true depending on what custom things you put onto a site. We can sometimes break that, but we try not to do it in careless ways. But yeah, 7.0 will be supported forever. It's running on the same servers that Squarespace 7.1 is running on. They're literally just different templates. And they share the same backends and they share the same infrastructure. So it might not get all the new features, but it's not like a second-class citizen. 5 will end up getting sunsetted at some point. I doubt any of you have. Does anyone here have a Squarespace 5 site? Did anyone here ever have a Squarespace 5 site? Wow. Okay, cool. That's old stuff. But yeah, that's the answer for 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep on going.
All right. Another question from our community. From 2008 to now, so let's say 15 years, what 3 moves that you made would you say have impacted Squarespace's growth the most?
The biggest one, Squarespace 6. I mean, the rewrite of that platform changed the entire company. I mean, we doubled our conversion rate overnight. Things picked up. It was game-changing. It was the best. You know, I mean, it was leaps and bounds above anything else on the web. It's probably why half the people in this room even know about us. And that was a really tricky move because, you know, it would blow your mind. I mean, it wasn't like A/B tested. It wasn't like, I mean, we just went and made it and used it and watched people use it and refined it and refined it and refined it. And then the testing and stuff came later. But that was a really big deal. That was an entirely separate code base. It's pretty well known that we actually are guilty of this ourselves. When you try to rewrite something from scratch, usually that's like the end of most companies, / it never completes. And I was referencing a project that we even had here internally called Squarespace 8, which never completed. All that functionality is rolled into 7.1 now. But it was just sitting here in this rewrite that never came together. You know, the end-to-end experience never worked. So the Squarespace 6 launch was huge. Moving to New York was big, actually. You know, there's no guarantee we were going to be a New York company. I mean, I was in school at the University of Maryland. I've always loved New York, came to New York. You know, New York's our headquarters. Now we have, you know, offices around the world, but this is a very special place for us. So that frankly changed a lot of the international talent we were able to get and attract back then, who ended up being instrumental people into the building of Squarespace. And then really, and this isn't just one thing, but really the output of the company is always defined by the team we have around us and what we're promoting or, you know, who we're hiring and all of that. And so, yeah, when we really started to hire a much better caliber and a more professional level of executive to the team. This is, you know, 10, 12 years ago after our first funding round. That really started to change things. It started to change how management worked here. It started to change what we were able to output creatively, product-wise, engineering-wise. And I would say those 3 things are probably the biggest ones.
Kind of continuing on that theme of Squarespace evolving, the world of technology evolving. As the website design landscape evolves, so do the technologies that power it, obviously. How does Squarespace plan to integrate emerging technologies such as AI to keep up with industry trends?
Yeah, so it kind of references what I was talking about earlier with the fact that I think Squarespace remains and feels very modern. We're an engineering design-led company. We're constantly integrating new things, constantly upgrade. We have just huge investments there. And so, the generative AI stuff is very, very interesting. We already have it in text fields and being tested in various onboarding flows. I frankly don't think it replaces the core of what we do, not even close, which is what I have to remind our analysts on our analyst calls at times. Squarespace does so much more than just code a website for you. It's creative direction, it's hosting, it's an SSL certificate, it's bandwidth, it's customer support, it's a domain, it's a registrar, it's a payment process. Like, it just goes on and on it's a team that's watching the infrastructure, responds in 1 second if the thing goes down, anywhere from worldwide. And you're getting that for like $20 a month. So it's an incredible value, and we're going to look at adding AI where intelligent. We have some section generation stuff that is pretty clever, but ultimately, it has more applicability in certain areas like coding assistance and things like that, where it's amazing. Obviously, the text generation is magic. I think Midjourney and DALL-E and all those things are amazing for like certain placeholder images or whatnot, where you don't have another alternative. Great for 3D. Video generation, all that stuff is awesome. But I think it's very complementary to the tools that we provide right now. And so we'll keep in front of it and keep integrating that stuff. The other thing that's really interesting about the landscape right now with AI is, we've been investing in machine learning for a decade. A lot of what we're integrating with OpenAI and stuff is an API call. So everyone kind of gets access to it at the same time, which is weird, versus before where it's like, if we wanted to do an ML model to, recommend templates or recommend domain names, which stuff we do, we would have to build that whole thing in-house. So it's much more plug and play right now than it's ever been. So actually the cost of us doing this is really low. And so is the cost of our competitors. But, we'll keep investing in the tool and integrating this stuff where appropriate.
As much as I'd love to continue to hear you talk about the product and stuff that you're investing in, we have time for one more question. And it comes from us and us, I think. We started the day off with these videos from the Squarespace, members of the Squarespace team answering the question, why do you love Circle members? So I wanted to ask you that question. Why do you love Circle members?
I mean, I think I answered it a little bit earlier, but it's so core to what we do. I mean, this community is so naturally close to us, because if you think about where Six started and the portfolios and the agencies and that art direction approach, and I think that we, of any company in this space, we uniquely have that DNA very, very close to us. We really care about design. It's completely real. It's not something I figured out later. We have creative professionals as part of our executive team. Other companies do not have that. And, we build tools for you all because we're very much like you too. And so, I just think that it's just a natural alignment. And I'll also kind of close with how I started, which is thank you. Thank you for being a positive part of the community. I know we don't always get everything right, but we're listening. And thank you for engaging in the betas, for helping customers come on the Squarespace. It's immensely important. And, it's our job over here to make sure you're not putting people in the wrong hands. We really care. And so just thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. This was a fantastic Circle Live conversation. And I just would like to say, I want to actually quote Circle member Chrissy Price and something that she said yesterday. Thank you for building a platform that allows us to have jobs that we love and lives that we love.
My pleasure. Thank you for keeping us employed as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, for this episode of Circle Live, I'm Sam Z.
And I'm Sarah G.
And we will see you next month.
Thanks, guys.
you.